for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
My name is Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
We have got quite a bit to talk about today, including a new poll that we put out just earlier this week, and some of the findings of that surprise and shock me. They dismay me more than anything else. We'll get into that just a little bit. As a reminder, folks, you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. We could use any help that we can get right now to keep the bills paid on this show. So patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. Or if you'd like to make a one-time gift, contact us via our Facebook message and we'll give you the details on that.
Or you can wait and let your taxes increase as we start another billion-dollar war with Iran.
Exactly. As they try to anyway.
Yeah, we're going to try and stick a fork in that today.
Also, just a reminder, you can listen to the show anytime at Spreaker.com. Just do a search for Southpaws there. You can find us on the iTunes store under podcast. Look for Southpaws, look for our logo, and you'll find us there. Accept no substitutes. We are the originals. And speaking of which, kind of more of a heads up for you folks here. Jack, you're going on vacation in a couple of weeks. Fun stuff, and get away from this country.
Yeah, taking a nice 14-day trip.
Yep, so for those 2 weeks, we are scheduling a guest host. We'll have some more details on that in the coming weeks, but let's get right into it here. So, Iran. This is just escalating. Trump is making the claim, the Pentagon's making the claim that a U.S. Air Force drone was shot down in international airspace. Iran says, nope, it was in our airspace. We had the right to shoot it down. Trump was going to attack Iran Thursday night in retaliation. Apparently, the planes and the ships are in place, and then he decided not to do it. Decided to hold off. No comment so far from the Pentagon or the White House as we record this show.
You know, for me, Darren, this whole thing teeters on the following reality. If the U.S. drone intrusion to the Iranian airspace was real, it is a violation of the UN Charter and national sovereignty of that country. I think that the pivoting point is, where was the drone?
Mm-hmm.
Where was Gary Powers' spy plane when it was shot down over Russia, heightening the Cold War prospects of war back, how many years ago now? That was back in Nixon's era anyway.
I believe so.
Not many people knew about it.
What was his name again,
Gary Powers. I talked to a journalist at Channel 8 yesterday because they came out unabashedly, made the news blurb. Well, we have been invaded. One of our drones was shot down in international waters. Mm-hmm. I called the journalist, a young woman. I said, this has shades of Gary Powers. She had no idea who I was talking about. I said, yeah, our country insisted that the spy plane that killed, or actually they retrieved Gary Powers.
Mm-hmm.
We insisted that it was a blatant shoot down of our plane in international air.
That was during the Eisenhower administration.
Yeah, 50s.
1960, May 1st.
1960.
Yep.
She said, oh, really? I've never heard any of that. You've never heard any of that? I said, well, possibly then you heard of how it's been proven now that the supposed gas attack prompted, supposedly, by Syria's government has been proven to be totally bogus. Mm-hmm. What did that do to allow us to put the military into Syria at the delight of Israel? That was a complete canard. You mentioned one that every American should have carved on their forehead, WMD, Iraq. What do you think is the biggest lie of the century, Darren? Is that in the top 5?
It's pretty close.
Look what it caused. Caused and cost.
Jack, you mentioned before we started recording the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where we said that the USS Maddox was attacked, and it wasn't. And that led us deeper into the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Which we lost.
In Venezuela, we sat right in these chairs a few months back and pointed out this so-called incident on the bridge, do you remember? Had all been instigated by guess who? Not protesters for the understressed leader of the country. Mm-hmm. No, by the good old U.S. of A. Yep. And you can go back in history. We started the Spanish-American War. Historians tell us we dressed up Spanish people to make it look like we were being invaded down in Texaco.
Texaco.
Yeah, Texaco. We might as well call it. United States is an oil company with an army.
Yeah, pretty much.
We have been famous for false flags. And I'm going to make a prediction. The next false flag you see that Pompeo swings around and Wild Bolton will involve the loss of life. Mm-hmm. It'd be an American journalist or to be a soldier, what have you. But that's where the ramp is going to be headed.
Oh, yeah, of course, because that's how it always happens. And the thing is that there are people that still believe this. There are people that identify themselves as liberals, identify themselves as progressives, that believe the narrative.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
You folks need to do critical thinking.
Yeah,
you really do.
I'll tell you one that I don't think many people have ever thought about analytically. When we went to war in Desert Storm, there was a story floating around that the Iraqi soldiers went into a hospital. Now, this was in the country adjoining that was going to be liberated, and shut the life support systems on children in the hospital ward of a hospital. Total and complete lie. Total and complete flag waving. They are masters at it. And who is the agency that transmits these lies? Is it Southpaws, who's asking you to buy a coffee mug?
No.
Who is it that takes these stories and spins them higher, generating hysteria? It's the mainstream media, folks.
Yeah. And they're doing that as a tool of the government.
Exactly. Now,
either wittingly or unwittingly.
Let's just go back real quickly. Iran said it shot down a U.S. spy drone on Thursday after the aircraft entered.
And where are you reading this?
This is from Common Dreams.
Okay.
And the title of the story is Accusing U.S. of Intrusion into National Airspace. Iran shoots down American spy drone. See, intrusion into their airspace is a whole different ballgame, is it not? Mm-hmm. That's a whole different spin. And I wonder if Trump even knows that this is going to come out. There must be some kind of aeronautical coordinates that can be established. Is that why he started backpedaling immediately, trying to say, well, maybe a mistake was made? I have my doubts. Anyway, Iran said they shot down a spy drone, which has a wingspan, this are my comments, of over 130 feet high. This isn't your Christmas drone you buy for Johnny. Mm-hmm. This is an aircraft, okay? Iran is not seeking war with any country, but we are fully prepared to defend Iran. Would you not wonder if a ship that size wouldn't have destructive capabilities? I mean, seriously. If it was a stealth bomber and it was in your air territory, do you think a sovereign country, to have the sovereign right to shoot it out of the sky? 133 feet. That's from here to the road. This is not a toy. Mm-hmm. And the General Hussein Salam said clearly, we are fully prepared to defend Iran. And that's what you're not going to hear in this mainstream media atmosphere, that this country looked upon it as an attack. Why the hell wouldn't you look at it as an attack? Listening to Bolton for the last month. U.S. drone intrusion into the Iranian airspace is a clear violation of the UN Charter. Abbas Masavi, spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry, said any violation of Iran's borders are strongly condemned. Hey, no kidding. We warn of the consequences of such illegal and provocative measures. Well, Channel 8 didn't take any time to cross-check Al Jazeera or the British, the BBC.
I will say in their defense, they're getting their stuff directly from NBC.
Exactly,
so
which is what she said.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how it's handed down, and that's the excuse. Our war machine puts it out that our drone was in neutral territory, and people suddenly are justified for the next ramp up. Mm-hmm. So anyway, folks, I only want you to realize this incident comes amid already dangerous military tensions between the U.S. and Iran. If we had the time and the chronological steps of how we got to this point in a checkers game, we're all the way across the board, and we're looking at now a military attack, a missile attack on their nuclear capability. It's something that Israel, if you haven't been paying attention, has been totally and completely calling for months. As a matter of fact, Netanyahu was caught with plans that were already drawn up to attack Iran. Mm-hmm. Excuse the language, but they have an erection on, and it's pointing towards Iran. Mm-hmm. And Netanyahu and Trump are right in the same military bed together. It's clear as a bell. I'm calling here to whatever people listen that you do whatever you can to stop this war. Chomsky has said it would be absolutely catastrophic. I mean, totally and completely what would happen in that region and its global implications with a possible unification of China, etc., backing Iran in an already tenuous relationship with China. You can't put the cards out any more dangerously than what they're laying on the table right now, today, the 21st of June, 2019. Folks, mm-hmm. I mean it. If you've never protested and you hear one in your town against this buildup, get out there. I remember the Million Man protest against the Iraq War. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to turn the TV on and see shock and awe again over the skies of Tehran.
Yeah. Yeah, Jake Johnson over at Common Dreams has been following this, and he writes this story as well as the one that you just mentioned. This was published on Friday, just hours after he brought the United States to the brink of war Thursday night by approving a military strike against Iran. Donald Trump abruptly called off the attack before any missiles were fired. That's according to the New York Times, which reported that as late as 7 p.m. Thursday, military and diplomatic officials were expecting a strike after intense discussions and debate at the White House among the president's top national security officials and congressional leaders. Here's how the New York Times reported this. The operation was underway in its early stages when it was called off. Planes were in the air and ships were in position. Iranian officials told Reuters Friday that Tehran received a message from Trump through Oman overnight warning that a U.S. attack on Iran was imminent. Citing anonymous senior administration officials involved in or briefed on the plan to attack Iran, the New York Times reported that it is not clear whether Mr. Trump simply changed his mind on the strikes or whether the administration altered course because of logistics or strategy. It was also not clear whether the attacks might still go forward. The military strike, which was approved after Iran shot down an American surveillance drone that it said violated its airspace, was reportedly backed by National Security Advisor John Bolton, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and CIA Director Gina Haspel, a team critics have described as the president's war cabinet. Now, we haven't heard that phrase in a while, have we, Jack? Not since World War II?
War cabinet?
War cabinet.
Our war cabinet was drawn up after a war was declared against Nazi Germany. What we're doing now is drawing the war cabinet up before we are in a war. Mm-hmm. A little bit different.
According to the New York Times, Trump initially approved attacks on a handful of Iranian targets like radar and missile batteries. The Times reporting, later confirmed by ABC News and other outlets, was met with alarm by lawmakers and anti-war critics who have been warning for months that the Trump administration's belligerence toward Iran could lead to an all-out military conflict.